Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and this week we have a lot to talk about with upcoming iPhones. We've got new Macs that we expect next year, and also iOS 26.2 Beta 2 is in the works and expected soon. This is the weekly Apple News update for the week of November 10th, 2025. Now, Apple last week released an app store online that you can access from anywhere. You can see all of the current apps, everything that you would see on the normal App Store, but it's accessible on iPhone, iPad, Mac, Windows, or whatever computer you have. So I'll link it in the description below if you want to check it out for yourself. However, it doesn't feature any liquid glass whatsoever, other than what we have with Safari in iOS 26. Apple TV just went through its rebranding from Apple TV Plus to Apple TV, and many had suggested or were worried that Apple could bring an additional ad tier support as one of the options. Currently, Eddie Q, who's in charge of Apple TV, has said there's no plan to bring an ad-based tier at this time, but didn't rule out that it could be something in the future. So maybe in the future we'll have an ad tier supported version, but right now it's basically the same as it always has been, just with the name Apple TV instead of TV Plus. Also, if you're in Edinburgh, Scotland, if you weren't aware already, you can now use Apple Pay Express mode on trams and buses. So that goes along with Apple Wallet. You can just quickly pay for the bus or the tram by walking up to it, and it typically pops up on your screen and you can pay quickly. If you're in the UK, Apple is inviting people to design a digital Christmas tree to display on the Battersea location. You can see it here on the Apple Newsroom update, and it says Apple invites the UK to participate in your tree on Battersea and express creativity on iPad this Christmas. So it's going on right now, and it's available to participate through November 23rd at midnight. So if you want to participate, I'll link it in the description below, but you could have your design displayed on the side of the Battersea location. Delta Airlines is now allowing you to use your boarding pass in Apple Wallet like many other airlines. You can also keep track of flights in the dynamic island when it's live, and you have all of the additional features with Apple Wallet when you're utilizing that. So if you're using Delta Airlines, you should be able to utilize that now. Apple released iOS 26.2 Beta 1 last week and then quickly pulled the update for the iPhone Air, iPad Pro M5, and iPhone SE, which all have the new Apple modems in them as far as what's common. So we have the C1 in the iPhone SE and C1X in the other devices. It's also not available currently, so if you're on iOS 26.1, you can't get the beta for iOS 26.2. So you'll see on the iPhone Air, it's just not available currently. Now, Apple did not give a reason why they pulled the update. However, this week someone messaged me saying that their iPhone Air had extremely slow 5G speeds when they updated to it, and when they contacted their carrier, they blamed it on Apple. Also, Max Weinbach on X had his iPad go into recovery mode when he was trying to install the update, but then he was able to restore back to iPadOS 26.1. So whether or not it's related to the modems or maybe corrupt files, we don't really know, but hopefully with Beta 2 they'll push out an update soon. When it comes to overall deals this week, well, the MacBook Air M4 is down $250 on Amazon for the base model, but other models are available with $250 discounts as well with different storage options. So if you're looking for an M4 MacBook Air, this may be the best time to buy one. I'll link it in the description below. AirPods 4 along with other AirPods are discounted as well, along with a 4-pack of AirTags for just $64.99 currently. Also, the M5 iPad Pro is already discounted on Amazon as well, sold from Apple. So all of those are on discount. I'll link them in the description below. As far as app updates this week, well, WhatsApp will be adding support for passkey-enabled backups soon, according to a blog post they made. So you can see it here. Encrypting your WhatsApp chat backup just got easier. So if we scroll down, they said the setting will be under Settings, Chats Backup, End-to-End Encrypted Backup. So that will be available soon. Also, WhatsApp is going to bring enhanced protection options for high-risk accounts with an option to enable a higher level of security features. This was found by WA Beta Info, and you can see it here, where if we scroll down, you'll have some options here where it will affect the overall usability of WhatsApp, but at least you'll be more protected. And if I can bring it into frame here, you'll see it says media and attachments will be blocked from unknown senders, privacy settings will be updated to limit who can call or message you, and when turned on, certain settings, see if we go back here, when turned on, certain settings will be locked. You can turn off strict account settings at any time. So those options will be available hopefully pretty soon for them that need it. Also, one other thing I wanted to mention is Canva, if you weren't aware of this already, bought Affinity last year and has now released the Affinity Design Suite as a free app on Mac and Windows. It's available now outside the App Store, so this is a great update. If you want to just use those for maybe creating different things instead of Photoshop, it's now available. A couple things I wanted to mention about iOS 26.2 is it seems like it complies with Japan's new laws about third-party app stores. So once it releases to the public, they'll then have access to third-party app stores similar to what Europe does in many places. Also, it gives them a choice of search engine options the first time they open Safari. And basically what it looks like is if we go to our Safari settings, so we'll just go into it quickly with my shortcut here. We'll go into our app settings. There we go. I'll link that shortcut in the description below. But basically you have your search engine options and it will give you the different options we have here with Google, Yahoo, Bing, DuckDuckGo, and Ecosia. So you'll see that the first time you open up Safari within Japan. When it comes to updates and Apple releases, Apple released macOS Tahoe 26.2 Beta 1 a few days after they released iOS 26.2 Beta 1. So that's available now if you want to check it out as a developer or public beta tester. And also we're waiting for iOS 26.2 Beta 2. Now, based on what they've done year over year, I probably wouldn't expect it until next week. That's typically a 2-week wait between Beta 1 and Beta 2, and then after that, they switch to weekly betas. So we don't exactly know if this is what they're going to do this year. However, when it comes to iOS 26.2's public release, last year Apple released iOS 18.2 on December 11th. So we could see it maybe December 8th or December 15th. And then Apple will typically take a vacation, and then we'll get back to future releases in the following year. So we could see an iOS 26.3 Beta 1 before the end of the year, and then nothing else until the following year. So usually the second or third week of January, we're back on the betas, and then a public release at the end of January. And then 26.4 by March, where we'll have those Siri upgrades. So hopefully if Apple keeps on track with that, that's what we can expect. A couple weeks ago, Apple had its earnings call, and Tim Cook said that Apple was on track to launch the updated Siri sometime next year. Last weekend, in the Power On newsletter, Mark Gurman has said that Apple is still planning on the Siri update around March 2026. The new version of Siri will rely heavily on Google's Gemini, and Apple is supposedly going to be paying Google around $1 billion a year just to utilize that. So the Gemini-based AI will run directly on Apple's private cloud compute platform and not be associated with Google. In fact, they're supposedly not even going to mention that they're using Google, so we'll have to wait and see how that works. But Gemini overall works very well if you've ever used it, so maybe they just needed to do that to get back to where they need to. Apple is working to make more use of its satellite connectivity, according to Mark Gurman. He said Apple is working to allow satellite connectivity to work in multiple apps, such as Apple Maps and Photos, also work indoors like normal cell signals do, and also they're working on bringing 5G via satellite and an API to allow developers to integrate that option into their own apps as well. This would be great in remote areas where maybe you don't have great cell coverage, and instead of just having it for emergency SOS via satellite, it would rather be available for everyone to use, maybe as an option to cell signals. So we'll have to see what happens with that. It works great currently with T-Mobile if you want to utilize that and maybe you're in a remote area, but typically it will default back to 5G cell towers that are nearby. Also this week, Mark Gurman gave us our first glimpse of what's to come with iOS 27, and in the report, the updates for iOS 27, macOS 27, and watchOS 27 are said to be accompanied by major updates to Apple Intelligence and AI in general. One of those things would have to do with Apple Health, where they're still planning to maybe make an AI-powered version of Health Plus. However, Apple Fitness Plus, with the subscription that some people love, some people don't seem to use, is available with Apple One, or you can purchase it separately. Basically, it's under review, according to Mark Gurman. He said that Apple is changing the management of the service, and they'll now report directly to Eddie Q to try and improve the overall offerings and use. So I don't currently use Fitness Plus, but I use a lot of the different health applications now with the Apple Watch. But let me know if you use it, if it's something you find valuable, or maybe you just don't use it at all. Now, we're a ways away from next year's iPhones, but Apple's always a few years ahead working on the next model, and iPhone 18 Pro models are not expected to get a major design change, but are expected to get new colors like they do every year. We have more of a controversial color this year where some people absolutely love the cosmic orange. However, I opted for blue. Some people like silver, but many people wanted a black color. However, it looks like Apple may be skipping that color next year as well, as there's new leaks from Instant Digital on Weibo who say that we could get a coffee, purple, or burgundy color. I would love to see a product red return, but we haven't seen one of those in a while. Now, just like the iPhone mini stuck around for 2 years, we expect the iPhone Air to stick around next year as well. And according to Digital Chat Station on Weibo, the iPhone Air 2 could feature 2 cameras instead of just one. However, they would keep the same camera plateau and just add the camera next to the current one. So that's what we're expecting for a release next year. That would be a big change for a lot of people if they added an additional camera, maybe bumped up the battery a little bit, and then added the speaker to the bottom. I think a lot more people would really like this device. So we'll have to wait and see if that's what they're going to do, but including that second camera could make more people switch to that model next year. All iPhone 18 models are also expected to update the forward-facing camera to a new 24-megapixel camera. This was rumored for iPhone 17 models, but wasn't really launched. However, according to JP Morgan Equity Research, Apple is bringing it next year with all iPhone 18 models. And with that new camera, there may be a size reduction in the opening to the camera on the front. According to Digital Chat Station on Weibo, Apple is testing a way to miniaturize the opening. This could mean just the camera itself or maybe a smaller dynamic island as a whole, but either way, the overall hole itself could get a little bit smaller, leading for maybe an under-display camera that we expect for the 20th anniversary iPhone. So that was something, again, Digital Chat Station on Weibo leaked out, that with the release of the 20th anniversary iPhone in a couple years in 2027, Apple is planning to hide the front-facing camera completely under the display. And that also goes along with the upcoming iPhone Fold. Again, JP Morgan Equity Research also said the upcoming iPhone Fold will have the first 24-megapixel under-display camera. So maybe with the reduction of size, they're able to hide it under the display, like I said, and they could do that for the Fold, making it just one large screen. Also with the iPhone Fold in the works this time, Fixed Focus Digital on Weibo has now said that Apple is stockpiling key components for manufacturing of the new foldable phone. Now the actual release is up in the air, but some have suggested it will launch in late 2026, while others have said it will be the following year. Either way, I would think next year. If they're stockpiling components, that seems to make sense that it could be next year if they have everything necessary to build the device. We're seeing a few things about the Apple TV and the HomePod mini where many expected an updated version this year. Inventory was running low on the HomePod Mini 2 as well as the Apple TV, but we only saw the update to the physical app itself and not the overall device. So Apple is expected to refresh this at some time, but we don't know if that's still coming toward the end of the year, or more likely it seems next year with sort of a whole home refresh that we're expecting. So we may not get anything until later on. Last weekend, we heard that the iPad mini could be getting an update for 2026 with an OLED display. This is according to Mark Gurman. It could also get some similar updates to iPhone where it could have an IP rating with water resistance. So we could see an update like that this coming year, and I know many people that love the iPad mini would really appreciate that. Maybe even thinner bezels and maybe a tandem OLED display would be a huge reason to use the mini if you love the device. Now, of course, this year we got the new M5 processor, and we expect more devices next year with the M5 as well. However, Mark Gurman this week at Bloomberg has said to expect an M5 Ultra chipset in a new Mac Studio coming next year, along with an M5 Mac Mini update. We could also expect an M5 Pro and M5 Max as well, but we expect the Mac Studio and Mac Mini sometime in the middle of 2026. So that may be a reason to upgrade from the M1 Ultra Mac Studio. I'm planning to do that if it is significant overall. Future MacBook Pro models are also expected to gain OLED displays. So this is something Apple is transitioning to, basically everything in the future. The exact release is uncertain, but it may not be in 2026, but could be with 2027. We don't have exact dates yet. After that, the MacBook Air is also expected to make the jump to OLED displays, but it wouldn't be until about 2028, according to Mark Gurman. So it looks like everything is slowly transitioning to the new display, similar to when they transitioned to Retina displays. Many had also been expecting a low-priced Mac to possibly launch before the end of the year. However, in the earnings call a couple weeks ago, Apple CFO Kevin Parekh hinted that we wouldn't be getting any other Macs this year. He said, on Mac, we expect to face a very difficult compare against the M4 MacBook Pro, Mac Mini, and iMac launches in the year-ago quarter. Based on this statement, it would seem there won't be anything new, so don't expect a change or growth in the last quarter. However, we can expect an entry-level MacBook next year that's well under $1,000, according to Bloomberg. So we may see that maybe in the early part of next year or possibly later on. But let me know if you would opt for one with maybe an A18 chipset in it or A19. We don't really know what it would contain, but it seems like there's going to be an entry-level version to compete with maybe Chromebooks or something like that. So lots of things to expect in the next year. Of course, we'll get new versions of iOS, many different updates as well, and hopefully a lot of stability with iOS as well. Let me know what you're looking most forward to, whether it's an iPad, Mac, iPhone, or just an iOS version. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do, and if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.